Hello and welcome to episode 443 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are coming off of the edge still exists kind of week. Sometimes in life, it's the small things, Adam, DFS is too tough now. Adam, everyone is too sharp. Hold on a second, brother man. Slate locks at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Saquon Barkley is 43% owned. 43% on a slate where I thought at least 7 running backs were good enough for cash and plenty more for tournaments. And yes, of course, I thought Saquon Barkley was a great play. I played him in cash, of course, but to run into that kind of ownership, 43% on Saquon Barkley with the systemic fragility of Giants offense and Saquon Barkley's history of boom bust kind of running, I hope that in hindsight, everyone recognizes why playing any expensive-ish running back at 43% is going to be shaky. But honestly, the Barkley thing is bad, but not nearly as jaw-dropping as the Bengals defense ownership. We have our algorithm, which helps us project ownership that you see in our projection tables. The algo had the Bengals defense around 45% owned. And I actually said we should manually override that. I said people are too sharp now. They know you can't play the Bengals at 20, 25, 30%, so they won't be 45% owned. I mean, we did the article on winning Millie Maker trends. I even tweeted it. Let me read what we said in the article. It said, try to never eat high ownership at defense/special teams in DFS. The variance and unpredictability of the position is massive. The correlation between ownership and actual DST points is an almost non-existent 0.165. In other words, defensive scoring in fantasy is random. And the best way to capitalize on randomness is by leaning into it, by taking low-owned defenses. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bengals at 2,200 against Cooper Rush, it can't fail. I have to play it. It can't fail. You don't. I had 9 tournament teams this past week, didn't play Bengals defense on any, and it always goes, and not that obviously I played Bengals defense in cash. I thought that they would do well, but it all goes back to what do you win when you win? And that's what I was saying about week 1 last week. The chalk smashed. If you played it, did you win? Or did you get 100th? Or 50th or 500th? Did you get first when the chalk smashed and you played it? Did you get top 3? When you're right, what's the reward? And so on Bengals defense at 40% in week 2, okay, if they get 10 points, can I survive that? Sure. If they get 20, am I fucked? Of course. But when they get 10 or they get 4 as they did and I beat them, or only losing them by a little, but if I beat them, I beat 40% of the field and I'm on my way. And that's why week 2 was such a GPP bro kind of week. Almost all the players who were most owned in week 2 main slate failed in spectacular fashion. I mean, mentioned Saquon, 43%, 11.8 DK points. Bengals defense, 41%, 4 points. Devontae Adams, 34% dust. Javonte Williams, 20%. Gibson, 20%. Judy, 18%. Albert O airballed at 10%. JT busted at 12%. Mixon only got 11 points at 16%. So by being contrarian in week 1, you were drawing dead to win in tournaments, but you also likely didn't rise to the top by playing chalk. By being contrarian in week 2, you put yourself in a position to just eliminate a massive, massive portion of the field who ate the chalk. And so, man, this was the week. I mean, this was it. We noted ahead of week 2 that Miami had the NFL's highest pass rate over expectation in week 1. And we also know that Mike Gesicki has been mostly phased out of this Mike McDaniel offense. Cedric Wilson is not a target earner. We also knew that the Ravens secondary was decimated by injury. So, man, to get this Tua Tagovailoa double stack with Tyreek and Waddle before anyone is really aware of what's going on. I mean, it's just pure sex. Tua was 3.5%, Waddle 6%, Tyreek 14%. The other side of the stack, Mark Andrews only 9%, Bateman only 3%. And by the way, I get asked a lot about ETR moving the market too much. Here's a good example. We were big time in on this Miami-Baltimore game, and it was still barely owned. Of course, all of us at ETR, we wish that everyone who plays DFS subscribes to ETR, but they just don't, Anyways, I'm a bit tilted because this was it. I mean, as I mentioned, this was the spot of the year. There's a really good chance that this will be my best GPP team of the year, and I didn't win. I got 10th in the big 3 max. That was 150K to first, and I got 7th in the smaller 3 max. That was 50K to first, and that's just not good enough. Had Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, brought it back with Andrews, DeAndre Swift at 4% with Lions defense at 1%. Knew Swift would be under-owned because of the ankle, but thought the risk was worth it there. The mini correlation I had was Christian Kirk and Ashton Doolin in the same game. And then I had Josh Jacobs as a one-off, leverage off the Derek Carr, Devontae Adams chalk. So I thought it was a really good team. not quite good enough. So that's frustrating. One other thing on tournaments I wanted to mention, I just hate when people chalk everything up to luck or variance. I mean, you guys know me, no excuses, play like a champion. In the long run, there's no such thing as luck. However, I will concede on this point. Sometimes the combos just don't fall the right way for you. I know Leone mentioned this on the GPP review show on Monday. And what we mean by this is that I had plenty of Nick Chubb in week 2, ton of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Kupp and Drake London, etc. But none of them happened to land on this Tua double team that I have. Like easily, instead of Doolin Kirk, I could have gone Amon-Ra Dotson or something. I don't know exactly what would have fit. But these combos and which lineups they end up in, that's just part of GPP bro life. Not only do you have to find the right players, you have to have the right combos as well. And there is certainly some luck in that. As for cash in week 2, I had a decent week, won 66% of my head-to-heads. Clearly got very lucky, as I would have been happy to play Trey Lance, but had the money for Derek Carr in this lineup and got a nice start at 1 p.m. So I went Derek Carr. I thought Derek Carr's floor was better than Trey Lance's, but Lance's ceiling was way higher. So if I had gotten off to a bad start or a mediocre start at 1 p.m., I probably would have gone to Lance. But the key, of course, at 1 p.m. was playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, I'm not sure how much more we can say about this guy. Hopefully, all of you have him in season long. It's just so clear. I mean, 2 easy things on Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Lions quietly have an excellent offense, and they have a well-known horrific defense. These wild shootout type games should have been expected and should be expected to continue. And second, the way Jared Goff plays, where he likes to throw the football, it's where Amon-Ra is clearly his best. I mean, Goff just loves throwing to this kid, and the Amon-Ra stuff is so fun. Got so much wrong this year. Obviously, the Kyle Pitts stuff at the forefront looks really bad. We'll talk to Silva about that later today, but the Amon-Ra stuff is so fun. One other interesting thing for cash. So hopefully you guys were in Discord and reading Top Plays on Sunday morning. I had a source tell me that Cam Akers was going to play a lot in week 2, far more than week 1. It's hard to know for sure if that was going to come to reality, but I thought it was a solid enough information to add a note into Top Plays, and we docked Darrell Henderson's projection and docked his spot in the Top Plays chart. And in cash, I tried to get off Darrell Henderson. I mean, I was never playing him in tournaments anyways, but I tried to get off him in cash. I just couldn't get to a team that paid more at running back and also kept Amon-Ra. So I thought, hey, even if DeHendo only plays 50% of the snaps at 5,700 against the Falcons, it's not the end of the world. And maybe that was bad. In hindsight, it probably was bad. But all the running backs failed in cash, so it ended up fine. Last thing before we get to the listener questions. Early part of the season, it's so huge to know what to react to and what should be left alone. What's an overreaction? In the props market in week 2, most of our bets were to week 1 overreactions. Kelsey under 7.5 catches after he erupted week 1. Lockett over 3.5 after he was dust in week 1. Amari Cooper over 3.5 at even money after he was dust in week 1. Some good examples there. And then we also got caught maybe overreacting ourselves a little bit. We had a Dameon Pierce under after his really bad week 1. We lost that. We had a Justin Fields over after he played pretty well in week 1, and that lost in spectacular fashion. So, it's hard, but extending sample sizes and looking at usage is the best way to know whether we're overreacting or not just looking at performance. All right. I know all of you want to bet sports. By the way, we've been doing the betting show on Friday nights with the King Sharp of NFL betting, Matt Davidow. It's been pretty popular and pretty good, I think, which is cool. And I'm actually not saying anyone should bet sports, but if you are, and I know many of you are, you better be getting the best line every single time. It actually makes me sick to my stomach to know one of you out there is taking a plus 3.5 when there's a plus 4 in the market, or an under 34.5 in props when there's an under 37.5 out there. You're just torching money. So you're going to need to have money on a ton of different books. And the best part of that is, on top of always getting the best line, you'll also get these absurd sign-up bonuses. It's really ridiculous. It's not going to last. All this money the books are spending on customer acquisition is just not going to last. But right now, there's so much out there. If you go to props and betting tab on ETR and then scroll down to ETR Sportsbook bonus offers, you'll see all the bonuses by state. So take advantage of it. All right, enough is enough. Let's get to everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, appreciate all the questions as always. These were left over from week 1. We're going to do 8 here today. We'll need some more questions next week, so stay tuned for when I ask for those. Question 1 from Kiki. As a fellow hat wearer, did you choose your profession based on the ability to always wear a hat? I love the term fellow hat wearer. Reminds me of that Curb episode where Larry gives the nod to anyone else that's driving a Prius like him. But look, the crazy thing is I always wore hats. I don't really know why. Even when I had a lot of hair, and believe me, I had a ton of hair. I know some of you have probably seen that picture from Penn State where I have the really long hair. So yeah, I always wore a hat even when I had a lot of hair. Now that I'm Ubaldo Jimenez, yeah, of course, I wish I had grown my hair super long for longer, hashtag regrets. As for choosing a profession that I can wear a hat, I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm really not opposed to getting dressed up or not wearing a hat or whatever. If the Sixers brought back Sam Hinkie and they asked me to be his assistant GM, but I have to wear a suit and no hat every day, yeah, of course I'm in. And in terms of choosing a profession, I mean, not to quote Rounders, but this stuff really chose me. I mean, I would be out here playing DFS and betting props anyways, regardless of whether there was any business stuff associated with it. So that's just kind of how it happened. So I didn't exactly choose the profession. It just kind of happened. And yeah, I didn't really see any reason to take off the hat. Question 2 from Jesse Martin. He says, how do you manage NFL season weekends with family? I think I remember you saying in the past that you take all of Saturday off. Is that still the case? So I'm doing something ETR related or something for playing fantasy or betting or whatever, almost 24/7, which is great. Of course, like I just said, it's really what I love to do. The problem is I have a wife, I have 2 kids, who desperately need me. I have friends, somehow there just aren't enough hours in the day, in the week to really do everything. That's just always going to be a fact. So I know a lot of people build lineups on Saturdays. I really try to completely unplug on Saturdays. It's an off day for the NFL. And I don't even like to build lineups until all the information is available anyways. What's the point? We need the Schefter bombs. We need other information. We need the latest weather. And so what I do is unplug Saturday and then get up real early Sunday around 4:30, 4:45 a.m. Mountain Time on Sunday. Gives me around 6 hours before lock to get my team set, digest all the info, do the last minute live stream with Silva, double check our projections and ownership, set the season long lineups, survivor picks, pick 'em pools. It's great. The 6 hours goes by so fast. Also, routine, it just creates structure with my family. It's not like, hey, by the way, like I'm not like showing up Saturday morning or Sunday morning, be like, hey, by the way, I'm going to be completely MIA Sunday. It's known. It's 17. Well, I guess 18 now Sundays per year. I'm working. Everybody knows and everybody gets it. So that works for me. Maybe not for everyone, but that works for me. Question 3 from Jake Mason. He says, could you provide us with a Jerry update? Yeah, thanks for asking, Jake. I know I haven't talked a lot about Jerry lately. Feel like that bit kind of ran its course and people had enough of it. For those guys who don't know, Jerry is my dog. She's a golden doodle, but she's doing well. She recently turned 9. She's not slowing down at all. She's still barking nonstop and running super fast and being the beautiful beast that she is. I think it's kind of easy to ignore or deprioritize the dog once you have kids, but I've tried to never let her feel that. I would never want to devastate her by thinking that she's secondary now. So we still do skin to fur before I get in the shower every day. I get completely naked. She, of course, is completely naked as always. I pick her up. She drapes her paws over my shoulders and I press my bare skin against her fur, and the bond remains strong. It's crazy. I know people who don't have dogs don't really get it, but Jerry's been through so much with us. We've had really low lows like any other family. She's just always there with the same demeanor. Literally, all she wants is life. All she wants in life is love from us and to be petted. Like, that's it. You can't really find that unrelenting, never distracted loyalty anywhere else. It's really incredible. So shout out to dogs. Question 4 from Yetz. He says, how do you personally determine if you have an edge in something? What are the factors/variables that should give someone confidence that their results on a small sample size thing like DFS, best ball, etc., are the result of an edge versus variance? Good question. Tough question. Yetz correctly points out how much variance there is in things like DFS, best ball, poker. That's especially true in tournaments and massively true in large field tournaments where it's so ridiculously top heavy. I think in those kind of formats, in those tournaments, in those large field tournaments, digesting at what rate your lineups are finishing in the top 1% of all lineups is a good evaluation tactic that Dink has talked about before. In other words, like, how many shots on goal are you getting? If it's significantly above what an average player is getting, significantly above expectation, then eventually you should break through and win on a big enough sample. I also think that extending your sample is a good way to know if you have an edge. Like, let's say you play DFS cash. Well, you can't tell a ton. You can tell some, but you can't tell a ton by just 18 main slate cash lineup. You can tell a little, but not the whole story. But what if you play cash for every slate for a full NFL season? 1 p.m. only slate, 4 p.m. only, all the 2 and 3 game slates, all the primetime slates, everything. And then let's say you add in NBA cash. Well, and you play that every day. Well, you have a really big sample then. And I think that's notable and you can take something from that. One more thing that I do is look at what my opponents did. Can I identify mistakes clearly? I was looking through my high stakes head-to-heads from this past week and I found one where my opponent played Rex Burkhead, clear error. If you look through the tournaments and you see that Bengals D is 41% owned, clear error. Already talked about that. Of course, the problem here is that game conditions are always changing. A good example, I think, is in poker. When I first started playing this 10-10 game, when Parks first opened outside Philly and they opened with this 10-10 no limit game. When I first started playing it, I had this really massive win rate for a pretty big sample, a few years worth. Then some of the fish got frustrated and quit. Some people got better. More good players entered the game. I didn't get better. And at that point, my previous win rate was irrelevant. I was winning super small after a while. And so that can be hard to evaluate. All this stuff, you have to really just pay attention for sure and see what you can find. Question 5 from FedSpeak Andy, who came to the ETR meetup in Denver, which was cool. FedSpeak said, "What did you do with the sack of golf balls I left in your backyard?" Yeah, this is an easy one. I threw it in the fire after you left. The balls, the golf glove, the tees, I just, burned it all. It's enough already with the golf freaks. Question 6 from Jeff Edelstein, great friend of the show, edited my book, of course, the very influential and pivotal book, Skin to Fur. Anyways, Jeff asked, public bathroom stall, seat is down and covered in pee. Obviously, you're not going to pick it up. Obviously, you're going to try to land all your pee in the bowl without touching the seat like it's an Olympic sport. What % success rate should we have? 100% is tough, especially with end shaking. See, I'm all for being a good person, for leaving something just as it was before I came, for paying it forward to some degree, but not when it comes to toilets. If there's pee all over the bowl when I come into a toilet, obviously there's no shot I'm touching the seat. You'd have to be an actual psychopath to do that. But if the seat is already ravaged by pee, I really don't care about getting more pee on the seat. It's already tainted. So yeah, I'm obviously aiming for the water, but I'm not really going to stress about it too much. I think the bigger issue in this spot is when you go into a toilet and you have to defecate and there's pee all over the seat and you can't sit anywhere. At that point, I just turn around and go home. That's easy game. Question 7 from Jack Burkart. Jack says, my wife and I don't have the same hobbies, but we listen to our podcast together on road trips so we can still connect. I thought she might think the solo pod is funny, and she does, but now she started calling me a spreadsheet virgin. How do I get back up from this? It's really crazy, Jack. A ton of people have told me they listen to the solo pod with their significant other. And by a ton, I mean roughly 25 people. It's still wild to me, though, that people sit down with their girlfriend, their wife, or guma, whatever, and listen to this. Like, I always thought that if I got famous or pseudo-famous, I'd have women in my DMs all the time, propositioning me. But no, it's all dudes. It's dudes trying to do shrooms. It's dudes with start-sit questions. It's dudes telling me how disgusting I am. I need to put on a hat, which is cool. Believe me, it's cool. But imagine a day in Portnoy's DMs or in Pete Davidson's DMs. I mean, I guarantee you, it's not dudes sending you videos of Trey Lance with strippers. It's not dudes sending you Hunter Biden's cock, or start-sit question. But anyways, back to Jack's question. I think your significant other understanding what a spreadsheet virgin is, understanding why it might be funny and being willing to call you that sounds like a good partner. So shout out to you. Congrats on the sex. All right, question 8. Last question we're going to do today comes from Liam, Best Ball Mania 2 champ Liam. He says, what's the most money you've lost on a bit? Yeah, that's an easy one. It's the 6, 12, 18, 24 challenge that Bales did a few years ago. I knew he could do it, or I knew he was likely to be able to do it, but really thought that it would be funny and fun to watch him go through it. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a simple challenge. He had 24 hours to do miles, masturbations, drink beers, eat donuts. You assign a number to each. He did 6-mile run. He had to do it in under 66 minutes, 12 jerks to completion, no dry coming, 18 beers, and 24 donuts. And he did it, relatively easily. I think I lost 5 or 6K, but honestly, it was so fun. It was so fun. It was so funny. Such a great memory. I'll be talking about this for the rest of my life. I mean, anytime this comes up, people just love to talk about it. So certainly worth it. I did do 2 sets of those 10 underdog drafts at the same time last month, and that only cost $500. But those teams are I think, drawing pretty close to dead. I mean, I think they'll advance at a high rate because I was pretty confident in our rankings and I got good players. But the correlation and structure stuff is all messed up because I was doing 10 at a time. But that was also good fun. And, who knows? Maybe I can get lucky. But, I was actually looking through those 20 underdog teams that I drafted at the same time. The best one has 304 points, which isn't a ton, but I open it up and it only has one quarterback. It's just so bad. Just Joe Burrow only. I must have just timed out a bunch or not realized I only had one quarterback. So yeah, that team is probably torched, but all in good fun. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the Solo Pod. I'll be back later today with Silva for the team by team pods, where we will recap everything we saw in week 2 and start looking to week 3. Be sure you're subscribed on YouTube and or anywhere you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss that going forward. For Jerry, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.